Our next chapter is going to be looking at the issue of internalized oppression. We'll be taking an in-depth look at why some of the minority group members begin to believe in the distorted images that the dominant group members are projecting upon their racial groups. So now we're going to be looking at a different type of oppression in this chapter, what's known as internalized oppression. Oppression can come in many forms, and we can be oppressed for various reasons, because of our race, our culture, sexual orientation, gender, and other statuses. When we accept or buy into the negative and inferiorizing messages that are propagated about who we are, then we have begun to internalize the oppression that we are experiencing. So what happens is that we start to learn that having certain traits, being a member of a particular group, and being who we are not good enough or not desirable enough by society standards. Sometimes we even learn to hate our traits, our groups, and ourselves. Even further, sometimes we end up hurting ourselves, our communities, and those we may share many similarities with, the ones who likely care for us the most, our families and friends. This is why internalized oppression does not just affect a few individuals. Instead, internalized oppression can destroy families, destroy cultures, and destroy communities. When we look at internalized oppression, we start to realize that these messages, which are so dehumanizing about women, racial minorities, LGBT individuals, people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups, when those ideas are allowed to propagate and they're allowed to survive in our society, it also affects people's mental health. These types of messages can distort people's views of themselves and others. Distortion of reality then leads to harmful emotions, things like self-hating. Such distortions can lead to harmful, sometimes deadly behaviors, both towards oneself, such as suicide, or towards others, such as physical and emotional abuse of women and hate crimes. So what exactly is internalized oppression? According to our text, internalized oppression has been defined in several ways that are psychological and internal. It's a type of racism that causes people of a subordinate group to believe the distorted messages of the dominant group about their racial group. The belief by racialized individuals that derogatory messages or negative stereotypes about themselves are true. And that then leads to a sense of inferiority, to low self-esteem, and to aggression due to social systems of prejudice, discrimination, and oppression. It's how we feel about ourselves and how we want to change ourselves because the characteristics associated with another group is designated as more highly valued by society. Internalized oppression occurs when one group of people recognize a distinct inequality of value compared to another group of people, and as a result, desires to be like the more highly valued group. For example, sometimes members of marginalized group hold an oppressive view towards their own group, or they start to affirm negative stereotypes of themselves. Internalized oppression may manifest on a group level as well as an individual one. Internalized oppression may result in conflict within the group too, and discrimination among the group members. Internalized oppression may also exist among some immigrants and their descendants. If the host community devalues the foreigner's ethnic origin, their native culture, their native language, the person may then feel a sense of inferiority, and this could then lead to self-hatred. Cultural racism is a term used to describe and explain new racial ideologies and practices that have emerged since World War II. It can be defined as societal beliefs and customs that promote the assumption that the products of a given culture, including the language and traditions of that culture, are superior to those of other cultures. It shares a great deal with xenophobia, which is often characterized by fear of or aggression towards members of an outgroup by members of an in-group. Cultural racism exists when there is widespread acceptance of stereotypes concerning different ethnic or population groups. Where racism can be characterized by the belief that one race is inherently superior to another, cultural racism can be characterized by the belief that one culture is inherently superior to another.